Howdy my totally tubular gamers, we're back with another video. Let's get to it.
Well, we're back with another ranking video, and it's going to be a little bit of a smaller one than what I usually do, but today we're going to be talking about my man Josef Fares and his 4 games. Now, if you don't know Josef Fares, he was the haha funny meme man fuck the Oscars from a few years ago at the Game Awards, but eventually went on to become an overnight sensation. His team, his studio, Hazelight Studios, have put out some of the best games of the last decade, and one of them, It Takes Two, even won Game of the Year at the Game Awards. So yeah, his studio's created some pretty incredible things, and I thought for today's video I would give a little review and ranking of all 4 of the games he's been a part of. That is Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, A Way Out, It Takes Two, and the recently released Split Fiction. I've talked about all of these games in the past, but I really wanted to reassess all of them with the release of Split Fiction. So I'll be stacking these 4 games up against each other, seeing which ones you should play, which ones maybe should you skip. Spoiler alert, that's none of them. Giving each one of these games a little review, sharing my thoughts, feelings, memories, etc. And I got quite a bit to say about all of these games, so get the Wendy's spicy nuggets, get the beef jerky, get the popcorn, start up the car, start going to bed however you're going to watch or listen to this video. We might be here for a minute, but I'm so excited to talk about all of his games. Some of these games really are my favorite games of the last like 10 years. Anyway, this intro's gone on long enough. Any support you can give is truly greatly appreciated. Seriously, thank you very much. Before we find out what his weakest game is, I gotta give a thanks to today's sponsor. Hey, do you love co-op games? Do you like hack and slash games? Or maybe even roguelikes? Well, that's where today's sponsor comes in with the game 13Z Zodiac Trials. This game is a 3D roguelike hack and slash that you can play not only by yourself but up to 4-player co-op. The game features frantic, fast combat that feels reminiscent of action games from the past, but now you can do so with multiple people. It's currently got 2 totally unique playable characters with 2 more on the way. It's also a roguelike built for replayability. You can craft unique playstyles, unlock game-changing modifiers, and dominate these ever-changing challenges. I've put hours into this game already and can verify that it's engaging, challenging, and most importantly fun. It's got a nice art style slash aesthetic, it's surprisingly polished, and it has a unique vibe to it. You can wishlist the game on Steam, and they even have a playtest going on for the game right now. Major thank you to 13Z The Zodiac Trials for sponsoring today's video. It could become your next favorite. I believe Josef's weakest game is his first, Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, initially releasing in 2013. So this game was actually not developed by Hazelight Studios, it was developed by Starbreeze Studio in collaboration with Josef, who at the time was just an award-winning film director, not an award-winning video game director. But despite that, you can absolutely see what Josef's vision would be for all of their games going forward, where it involves 2 central key characters. Now, I remember when this game released well over 10 years ago, but it was one of those games that actually sat in my backlog for almost an entire decade, but after finally sitting down and playing through the entire game, I did enjoy it. There has since been a remake of this game that not only improves the graphics, but there's some gameplay tweaks here and there, but I've never touched the remake, I've only ever played the original game, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So what is Brothers' premise? What is this game all about? Well, it's about these 2 brothers who set out on a journey to go get some medicine for their sick, dying parental unit, and along the way they will have to overcome a number of challenges. Now, despite the characters speaking in an entirely fictional language, this is still a very emotional tale, and it deals with some really heavy topics like trust and what it truly means, or loss. And as you play through this game, you really become connected to these brothers, and you are absolutely going to want to see what happens next. The ending is also a bit emotional. No spoilers here, but I thought it had a rather powerful ending. I also think the world is pretty interesting in Brothers. It's actually set in like a fantasy world, which I certainly did not expect. I think the storytelling is actually really strong in Brothers, and it certainly is one of the key reasons why you would want to play this game. When it comes to actually playing the video game, it does play pretty different from Josef's other games. Despite it being about 2 central characters, it is actually a single player game. I believe the remake changes this, but with the original game, you actually get to play as both of the brothers, and each one of them is tied to an analog stick. While this might sound a little weird or wonky at first, you'll quickly get used to this and it'll become second nature. There aren't many games that control like this, but I think the controls are actually very intuitive in this game. When it comes to the actual moment-to-moment gameplay, really it's more of a puzzle platformer than anything else. It sees both brothers really just going from A to B and along the way solving a lot of puzzles. All the puzzles will require both of the brothers, and you're really going to have to work together in order to get through these. There's a good amount of platforming in the game as well, and I found all of this to be rather enjoyable. There's no combat, but there were still plenty of engaging encounters with some of the creatures that show up in this world. While some puzzles and encounters are clearly better than others, there's a certain level of underlying quality throughout it all, and I still found the entire game to be rather engaging. I thought the pacing was pretty strong as well. You don't really spend too long in any area in this game. And I would hope that the pacing is pretty good given how short the game is. The game can be beaten in under 3 hours, and it's easily my biggest issue with the entire game. Sure, it's an emotional, somewhat impactful 2 to 3 hours, but I feel like this game could have actually used a bit more. I mean, I guess it's better to leave me wanting more than the game dragging on. I just wish it was a little longer. At least it's got a good art style to it. You can tell this is very clearly a AA or B level game, but I've always enjoyed how it looks. And I've always enjoyed this game. Despite the short length and relatively simple gameplay, I still think it's good if you're looking for a short, emotional narrative experience. It might not blow you away like some of Hazelight's games, but I still think it's good and I do recommend it. So here we have Hazelight Studios' first title, A Way Out, initially releasing in 2018. Now, A Way Out actually got funding and publishing from EA, and so with the bigger budget, they were really able to look at what Brothers accomplished and what it did right and just blew it up to the next level. And I think what they've created here is a pretty remarkable game. So A Way Out takes place in 1972 and is set in this giant prison. It stars two men, Vincent and Leo, and it's really about the two of them coming together to find a way out. Both of them want to get the hell out of this prison. They've got a score to settle, and they're going to have to rely on each other if they want to get out. I think the story to this game is actually really remarkable. Out of all of the games that Josef and really Hazelight Studios have been a part of, I think this one has the best story. And while all of the other games have good to great stories, I just really love the narrative of A Way Out. I love how these characters come together, not really trusting each other at first, but eventually really relying on each other and realizing that they can't do anything on their own. They're going to need each other if they want to find a way out of this prison. I love the character development, and I just love the direction this game takes. There's a lot of twists and turns in this game, but it really only gets better and better. The last third of the game is also pretty shocking. The writing and the dialogue are pretty strong, the characters are likable, they have very clear motivations, and I found the entire thing to be engrossing and really cinematic, even with the split screen. Speaking of split screen, let's talk about actually playing A Way Out. So unlike Brothers, this is a cooperative experience. It requires two people. You cannot play this game by yourself. So you can either have someone sitting right there next to you on the couch playing through the game with you, or you can buy the game once and get a friend code allowing you to send the game to somebody else so they can play with you. But what's great is that you don't need to buy the game twice. When it comes to the core moment-to-moment gameplay, they really, and I mean really, expanded on everything Brothers had. The game is now played from a third-person perspective, and it's all about interacting with the world and the other player. You'll really have to work with the other player to do pretty much anything in this game. While there are a few things you can do by yourself, this game really rides on its cooperative nature, and so it's good that the co-op is as good as it is. You're really going to have to rely on player 2 or player 1 if you're player 2 to get anywhere in this game, and the game will frequently be putting you in different interesting scenarios. It's really going to take a lot to break out of this prison, and I won't spoil anything, but I'll just say there's a lot more to this game than just breaking out of the prison. You find yourself in so many crazy different scenarios, and it's such a frequent rate. The pacing is really strong with this one, and it feels like every hour you're doing something completely different from the last, and they usually introduce some kind of gimmick or new mechanic, and you rarely ever do the same thing twice. It's just constantly introducing new ideas throughout the entire experience. Even the last 30 minutes of the game is still introducing new ideas. The gameplay never gets stale, it never overstays its welcome, and it's always feeling fresh. One moment you're scheming and being stealthy, another moment you're shimmying along some really high up cliffs, then you're in a third-person shooter, a competent third-person shooter I might add. There's a lot of variety here. And the game isn't super short either. It is much longer than Brothers, taking around the 8 to 9 hour mark, and it's a really strong 8 to 9 hours. There's even a few parts to the game where you even get to make choices, and these choices will affect the gameplay going forward for a little bit. So there's certainly a little bit of replayability here. Along the way, there's also a bunch of mini games that show up that don't really add anything to the story, but it's just fun to mess around with the mini games, like the arm wrestling, playing baseball, etc. And these are always fun. I may have also spent way too much time on the arm wrestling if we're being honest here. But was there anything I didn't really care for in A Way Out? Look, this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think A Way Out kind of peaks early. I know some people disagree with me on this one, but I think the first half of the game is much stronger than the second half. The second half is good, great even, but man, those first few hours getting out of the prison, it is so hype. I enjoyed every single minute of it. And to be honest, with the second half, I don't know if I could say that. There's nothing bad or even anything close to bad. It's just like shit, those first few hours, they are peak, they are hype, and the game can feel a little disjointed at times thanks to that. Something that is really great though about A Way Out is the presentation. Thanks to EA publishing the game, there was a lot more money here, and the game looks a hell of a lot better than Brothers. It's a good looking game, the character models look nice, the environments are great, the facial animations are awesome, and the voice acting is excellent throughout. The presentation, it was just really spot on. So all in all, A Way Out is an excellent game. It's one of the best cooperative games ever made, and while I don't think it reaches the highs of Hazelight's other games, but it's pretty damn close. Despite that though, this will be one of those unforgettable gaming memories that I'll cherish forever. Sitting down with one of my best friends and the two of us just having a blast playing through this, it was a great time and I'm not going to forget it anytime soon. And so with that, I wholeheartedly recommend A Way Out. You won't be disappointed by this one. And so here we have It Takes Two, releasing initially in 2021. Now, It Takes Two has been talked about ad nauseum, even by myself, but the game absolutely deserves it. It feels like they looked at A Way Out and just said, how do we blow this up to the next level? And that's exactly what they did. When it comes to the story, it's pretty simple. It's about a man and a woman who have been married for quite some time. They even have a daughter together, but they don't love each other anymore. They've fallen out of love and they want to get a divorce. A tale as old as time, really. But before they could go through with the divorce and explain to their daughter what's happening, a magic book shows up known as the Book of Love. And what does he do? He turns them into these small dolls and pretty much tells them that if they want to stop being these small dolls, go back to normal life, they're going to have to get their shit together, they're going to have to fix their relationship and find love again. And in a nutshell, that's really the premise. I don't think it's as strong or captivating as A Way Out, and I don't think the characters and dialogue is as engrossing as A Way Out, but I still think the story's pretty good in this game. It still covers a variety of topics, some really heavy themes, and there's plenty, and I mean plenty of moments, both good and bad. And by the end of it, you're really going to want to see all of the characters come together, but remember, it takes two.
Shut up, bitch!
So when it comes to the moment-to-moment gameplay, it focuses entirely on the cooperative aspect. There are very few things you can do by yourself in this game. Dreamwork really makes the teamwork out here, and the game has to be played in co-op. But like A Way Out, there is the friend pass, so only one person does need to buy the game, which will always be very convenient. Unlike A Way Out, this game really moves at a breakneck speed, and it actually focuses a lot more on the 3D platforming. There was a little platforming here and there in A Way Out, but here, 3D platforming is what you're predominantly doing. And I gotta say, the 3D platforming is actually pretty good in this game for a few reasons. The controls are really smooth, they're incredibly tight and responsive, and it always feels like you have total control over your character. They have a pretty simple moveset, but it all feels important and all of it does get utilized. You can jump, double jump, you can do a little dash, you can wall jump. And as you play through the game, you get a bunch of temporary abilities that really expand your moveset, sometimes to great lengths. I mentioned just a second ago that the game has breakneck pacing, and I absolutely mean that. The first cutscene is under 10 minutes long, and then they really just throw you into it. You start platforming immediately, they start throwing set pieces at you, they start throwing new gimmicks, gameplay mechanics, and ideas at you left and right. The pacing and variety has just been cranked up to 11. You are never doing the same thing twice. Every hour is completely different from the last, and the game just has a bunch of other gameplay styles to it. Yeah, you do lots of 3D platforming, but for one section, it's like an action RPG, another section you're driving. There's actually several vehicle sections. At one point, it's a third-person shooter, sometimes it's a puzzle platformer, sometimes it's a 2D platformer. This game is mixing it up all the time. There's also plenty of bosses, and all of these bosses are just straight-up spectacles. They're all great, they utilize the mechanic that they just introduced to you, and they're all incredibly memorable, like this giant vacuum that tries to kill you. And speaking of vacuums, and I guess just household objects, something I really love about It Takes Two is the setting. Since they're these tiny dolls, it actually just takes place around their house and backyard. One moment you're in the attic, another you're in the backyard, but because you're tiny, everything feels much more exaggerated and it takes a lot longer to get around the house. I've always liked the setting to It Takes Two. All of the gameplay really does come together because there's one underlying theme or concept to it, and it's right there in the title, that it really does take two. It's all about the cooperative aspect. Everything you do in this game, you're doing together. You're working together. No matter the gimmick, no matter the gameplay change, no matter the 3D platforming, no matter the boss fight, no matter the set piece, you always have to be working together, and I love just how many different creative ways the game is able to come up with scenarios for you to work together. For instance, there's one part where each character is given a special ability, and to get through that level, you have to utilize both special abilities, usually in tangent, in order for both of you to get through it. It's like a way out on crack out here. It's also quite a bit longer than a way out, taking well past the 10-hour mark, but I think the pacing's incredible. It never got stale. It doesn't ever even come close to wearing out its welcome, and I just wanted more and more from it. There's also these fun little side mini games that show up. There's a ton of mini games, and I found these to be just fun little distractions thrown in there purely to just have fun with the other person you're playing this game with. It feels like this game does everything in its power to just create fun scenario after fun scenario, kind of like a roller coaster, and it keeps cranking things up until the explosive finale. The last thing I want to bring up is the presentation. This is a great looking game. It's not actually a AAA game, but you could convince me it totally is because, yeah, it's a good looking game. The environments are well detailed, the character models are great, the animation is solid, and the voice acting is pretty good as well. And so overall, I highly recommend It Takes Two. If you still haven't tried this game at this point, find somebody to play the game with you. Your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your partner, your dog, your cat, your goldfish, a mound of dirt, someone that can play the video game with you. Find somebody to play this game with you. You're gonna have a great time. It was another unforgettable experience, and it's one of the best 3D platformers of the last 10 years, but it's also one of the best games of the last 10 years. There's a reason it won Game of the Year. It really is very high quality, and it should absolutely be experienced. But then we have Josef and Hazelight Studios' latest title, Split Fiction, and all I gotta say is, if you thought It Takes Two went hard, man, Split Fiction goes even harder. I had pretty high expectations for this one, especially after Josef himself said that this was some next level shit, and you know what? He was not wrong. This game really is one of the most creative, innovative titles that I have played in a very long time. It Takes Two was wildly imaginative, but Split Fiction takes it even further to places I didn't even realize were possible. So when it comes to the story, it's pretty simple. It's about two aspiring writers, Zoe and Mio, who have never been able to publish a book, but they hear that they're able to get published from this megacorp known as Radar. They both show up there and are told they have to go in a machine that is essentially the Matrix, where they can extract their novel from them, and the person also gets to relive their novels, thoughts, ideas, etc. One of the girls, Mio, gets cold feet and ends up falling into Zoe's simulation, and so their novels, ideas, thoughts, and feelings all converge and mix together. They also realize that this machine is basically stealing all of their ideas from them so that then the mega corporation can sell them off. And so it's up to them to get out of this machine, stop the simulation, and stop the evil megacorp Radar. The girls are very different from each other. Zoe is much more cheerful and all about traditional fantasy. Mio is a lot more agitated and closed off. She's also really into sci-fi, and so they definitely clash a lot. At first, I actually wasn't really digging the story all that much. The characters were really bouncing off each other. They were just kind of arguing a little too much, at least for my liking, and the dialogue felt like it kind of belonged in a Marvel movie. But as I played through the game, these characters really grew on me. They start to like each other more, and I feel like the dialogue got way better as the game progresses. It does eventually cover some heavier topics, and I can appreciate that the characters aren't as one note as they originally seem. They actually do have a bit of depth to them, and by the end of it, yeah, I really liked the main characters. I will say though, the main antagonist, the evil corporation, they are pretty one note. Like, they're just evil, low-key for the sake of being evil. But all in all, I still thought the story was good. It wasn't as good as It Takes Two, and it certainly wasn't as good as A Way Out, but it wasn't bad by any means. I think it was just good. Where Split Fiction really excels though is the gameplay. The gameplay is nothing short of brilliant in this game. The game takes the incredible pacing and variety from It Takes Two and really just takes it to a level that I didn't even think was possible. There is so much variety with this game. You're constantly jumping between fantasy world and sci-fi world, experiencing stories made by our main characters, and really this is just an excuse to come up with wildly different scenarios from the last where you're doing something completely different. Above all else, this is a 3D platformer. There's even more platforming in this game than It Takes Two, but the platforming is really great. Not only is it just as responsive as It Takes Two, but the level design is incredible. It is easily some of the most creative 3D platforming you'll find in any game. It really does rival Mario and Astro Bot. It's that damn good, but this game is way more than just the 3D platforming. Like It Takes Two, it is constantly mixing things up, giving you new gameplay mechanics and just straight up styles of gameplay. While you mostly do 3D platforming, there's plenty of other things that show up in this game. From commandeering plenty of different vehicles to a lot of puzzle solving actually, to hack and slash combat, third person shooting, and even more that I don't want to spoil. Like, this game goes really hard with the different gameplay styles, but like It Takes Two, you have to work together in order to get anywhere in this game. You really are going to have to come together to find solutions to these puzzles and to get through these levels, but it is just so much fun. It feels like every hour is so different from the last, where you have a completely new gimmick or ability, and nothing ever gets repeated, nothing ever even feels similar to the last level. All of these levels have their own distinct personalities, styles, and creativity, and as you play through the game, it gets more and more creative to what is easily one of the coolest, greatest finales I have ever seen to a video game. It was straight up mind-blowing. Like, I don't even have words for it. You just need to see it, but I don't want to spoil it. It was incredibly creative and innovative. I feel like no video game has tried to do what this game did for its finale. It really was the little bow on the present that is Split Fiction. Like, this game is just incredible. The pacing is phenomenal. The variety and gameplay in general is top-notch. It's incredibly polished. It's all well done. There's no bad gameplay segment here. The game has a good length to it, taking well beyond the 10-hour mark. There's side stories to play where the gameplay gets even more wild. It feels like there's a new idea every corner. Did I mention the game doesn't repeat any of its ideas or gameplay styles whatsoever throughout the entire experience? There are dozens of memorable moments and set pieces. It looks great. It runs incredibly well on the computer. And above all else, it's just a really fun time. Sure, at first I didn't really care much for the story and the characters, but eventually it did grow on me and I came to like them. But man, that core moment-to-moment gameplay, it just goes so hard. No matter which part of the game you're in, it's always going to be great. I have zero problem recommending Split Fiction at full price. It is easily a Game of the Year contender and the best game I've played all year. I don't know how they topped It Takes Two, but they did it. This will easily go down as like one of the best games of the 2020s and one of the best cooperative titles ever made. Josef and Hazelight Studios really just went balls to the wall nuts with this one, and I don't even know how they topped this, but I'm so excited for whatever he's a part of again, because this game, oh, it's just so good. Go play Split Fiction. They're not sponsoring me for this video or paying me or anything. I genuinely think the game is just really, really great. And I doubt there will be many experiences in 2025 that will be able to rival the quality that is this game. Alright, well that's it for today's video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for making it to the end of the video. If you made it to this part of the video, you can comment Kirby, because I'm thinking about playing some more Kirby. Probably not going to do it. Anyway, that's it. Stay safe, y'all. Bye-bye.